Hey, everybody, welcome back to CF's Heroes of Sport. My name is Bob Babbitt, co-founder of Challenge Athletes Foundation. Every week, we get to chat with one of our amazing challenged athletes. This week is no different. We are joined by Michelle Pinard, and Michelle just finished the $1 Million Challenge bike ride from Santa Barbara on down to San Diego over 3 days. Michelle, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I am awesome. And reading up a little bit, it sounds like running was your happy place from what, the age of 7 on?
Yes, I was a new girl in school in second grade, and the local track coach came into my classroom and said, would anyone like to join the team? And I didn't know anybody. And I thought, hey, why not? And I thought maybe I could meet some friends. And that was the first day, what would be 43 years of a really great friendship with running.
Well, and what I read was that from running was really your go-to whenever anything was, you were down or whatever you needed to escape. It was almost like a friend.
Yeah, my friend, my sidekick, my release, through good and bad. Good days I'd go for a run, feel great. Bad days I'd go for a run and feel better. It was just my something about being outside, hearing my lungs pump energy back into my body. Like I've said before, the wind in your face and in your hair, there's just something magical about that.
So did you run competitively, like through high school and college, or was it more just recreation?
So I ran on a local AAU team through grade school. And then in high school, I ran track and cross country. In college, I had a lot of fun and I didn't run.
Right. 5 marathons, 50 half marathons. You obviously, what were some of your favorite marathons?
My favorite by far was the Boston Marathon. As a runner, that's sort of the pinnacle of what you hope to get to. And I never thought I'd even qualify to go. And when I qualified, my husband was like, we got to do this.
Absolutely.
And he's like, for men, it's obviously a lot more difficult to qualify. So he said, I'll go ahead and raise the money through Dana-Farber, and we're going to do this together. He's from Boston originally. So it was a really epic event for us. And it was the most beautiful marathon in terms of there was not a mile, 100 yards without fan support.
Yep.
And then crossing that finish line was just an amazing moment. Unfortunately, it was the year of 2013 where the bombs went off. And it was one of those moments where it was like the happiest day of my running life and one of the saddest days of my running life, all culminated together.
Were you able to get to the finish line or no?
Yes. I had my PR that day.
What's your PR?
3:23.
Wow. I mean, that's real deal. You're talking real running.
Well, yeah, for a middle-aged mom, that's not a bad time.
For anybody, that's a really good time. 3:23 is, I would kill for 3:23.
So we were staying at the West End across the street from the finish line. And our goal all along was just to meet back at the hotel because I started in a quick or an earlier wave than my husband did. So I got really cold afterwards, and I headed back to the hotel, took a nice long shower. And right as I was getting out of the shower, I heard the first bomb go off. And I ran to the window, and that's when I saw the second bomb go off. And I froze. I didn't know where my husband was. Didn't know what was going on. And about 10 to 15 minutes went by without anything. Nothing was on the news yet. My phone, there was nothing, there was no information because it had just all happened. Luckily, my husband had a really great race too. And he was stretching out by the finish line. And as soon as he heard it go off, he beelined to the hotel, and never hugged someone so hard in my life.
Wow. It's fun. And Boston is just so special. It's like Boston and the Ironman World Championship are like two of those finish lines that are bucket lists that you have to do. There's nothing like finishing downtown in Boston and the crowds the entire way. It's pretty special. So it was during a marathon, 6 years ago or so, where all of a sudden, I mean, as a runner, you know your body so well. You just knew, right? You just knew that something wasn't quite right.
That's correct. I did Long Beach in 2015 to
Mhm.
celebrate my 45th birthday. And I was hoping to get a PR because Long Beach is really flat.
Yep.
Um, and unfortunately, it was a Santa Ana day. It was 91 degrees during the race.
Oh,
I finished, but not with the time that I expected. And after that race, I started noticing on training runs that I was kicking myself and tripping. I had a couple of falls, and my gait was off. You know, the natural gait that I had always had was just something was disconnected. And so I went to my doctor and we did a few tests, and she sent me to a neurologist. They did more tests. And every time I went to the doctor, they said, everything looks fine. You know, there's no tumor, there's no brain cancer. It's not MS, it's not Parkinson's. So it was a kind of this thing where they were eliminating things rather than listening to me and looking at me as a patient.
right.
I kept hearing, well, you're just getting older. Things change as you get older. And I wanted to tell them they don't know me. I'm really
No.
determined, and I know my body. And
Yes.
so 5 years went on with me going from doctor to doctor with no diagnosis, and then my running getting slower to the point where I had to walk, and then my walking was getting more difficult. And so finally, in September of 2020, I gathered up all my medical records and I called the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, Arizona, and I said, "Will you take my case?" They said, "We will." So the whole process of trying to get all your medical records during a pandemic to Mayo Clinic was a huge learning process. But I made it happen. And my husband and I flew out there. We spent 4 days, and I went through a really long list of different testing. And on the fourth day, they came to me and they said, "We know what's going on." And I said, "I'm crazy, right?" And the doctor said, "Well, it's in your brain, but you're not crazy. It's something called cerebellar ataxia.
Yeah.
And it's a very rare neurobrain disease. Basically, the cerebellum, which is the part of your brain, the back part of your brain that controls all of your involuntary movement, your balance, coordination. Mine is shrinking. And from what my neurologist said, basically, when you look at the MRI, my cerebellum looks like that of a 90-year-old woman.
Oh my God.
And he said that I sent him my old MRI pictures that was going on the whole 6 years where I was being told that I was fine.
You know, it's fascinating to me, and this is something I've heard a lot because as an athlete, we're different. You're different from other people. You know, you have a sense of little things in your body that somebody from the outside, even a doctor, doesn't matter how trained they are, they're not going to see it. And they're going to say it's in your head, or you have a low threshold of pain, or right, all
Right.
those type of things. Or you're just, you know, balance is something as you age, it goes away. There's always that type of stuff. Were there points where you really started questioning yourself, where you were,
Oh,
because they put doubt in your head?
they did. They did. There were years that went by where I just didn't even go to a doctor again because I was like, I felt so defeated every time I would
Yes.
go, and that they would say there was nothing wrong, but I knew there was something wrong. So yeah, I definitely went through highs and lows of wondering, but I always had this like gut feeling that something was wrong. And so like 6 months would go by or a year would go by and I would try again.
Right.
And then finally to get the diagnosis was, it was really scary, but
Yeah.
it was a relief. It was a relief to know that I knew my body and I had an answer finally.
It's funny because it's like good news, bad news. Good news,
Yeah,
we have an answer. Bad news, it's not really what you want to hear, that you've got this progressive disease with no cure.
exactly.
When you finally did get that, obviously you know you're not crazy. You know there's something there, but now you have to deal with a diagnosis that is basically saying this thing that you love so much, running, is probably gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I went through probably about a month of grieving and, uh, processing
Sure.
the results. And then I decided, we only have one life to live, and let's live this and let's live it to the best we can. I started journaling and kind of going back to the start of my running, my 43-year journey of running, and all the good times and the bad times. And then how it brought me to knowing that something was wrong with my body, and the pathway of, to my diagnosis and all that I went through to finally get my answers. And by the time I finished my journal, I sort of worked through the grief of it all.
Yeah.
I got to celebrate all of those years and realize how lucky I was. I mean, who gets 43 years of running as your sidekick and your best friend? I mean,
Well,
that's
and especially at the level that you were running, because usually once you get to 30, 35 years old, you're not running faster,
right.
right? You're not getting better. But that's sort of an orthopedic reality.
Right.
But you were still running really, really well into your 40s. That is a gift to be able to.
It was a gift. And so I looked back at it and I said, I have a story to tell here, a story of, trusting yourself, trusting your gut, not giving up, and, fighting for yourself, for what you believe in. And so I wrote a little book, and I'm hoping that someday maybe it just helps one person, kind of take the challenges that are going on in their life and find a solution or a different path.
So when the worst day of your life didn't kill you the next morning, that's going on. Is that on sale now?
It is on sale at Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and Target.com.
And it went on sale when you were finishing up $1 Million Challenge.
It sure did. It launched the day that I was riding into the Bonita Cove, and a neighbor girlfriend of mine drove up to Vista to the printer to pick up a couple cases for me, so that when I finally arrived back home, they were sitting in our entryway. And it was the second most emotional thing I had done that day.
That is so cool. So it's a 220-mile ride. And when was the first time that you got on a recumbent and realized, okay, this can be pretty cool?
Well, this is a really cool story. So part of my book, that the transition from running, was I found this recumbent bike that I could use. And so while I was writing, I realized that maybe this is something I could do. Maybe I could still compete again, or get back out on the open road again. And so I have a friend, Christy Fritz, that works for CAF.
Oh, yeah.
She was an old running buddy. And I said, hey, Christy, is there any chance I could come by and just see if there's any type of adaptive bike that I could do? Because as you know, these bikes are really expensive. And I wanted to try something before I researched what was available. And so sure enough, the next day, I drive down to headquarters, and Travis Ricks and Mike Jennings meet me, and they throw me on this recumbent bike that was owned or ridden prior to me by Stephen Peace, who has become a dear friend.
Yep.
And they put me on the bike. They throw me out in the parking lot and put a helmet on me, and I took off. It was the happiest I had been in many, many years. And I went skidding around the parking lot there, and I was like, all right, this is my new pathway. Exactly. And so I got off the bike, and they're like, where's your car? I'm like, well, it's right over here. And before I know it, they're loading it in my car. And they said, you borrow this for as long as you need it. And I said, okay. So the next day, I went around the neighborhood to kind of figure out the gears, and, because everything's on the left. So I had to figure out the back gears and the front gears and the brake. And I was like, all right, I can do this. So I called up my old running buddies, who are also cyclists. And I said, hey, would you guys mind just taking me on a ride? And they were like, sure, we'll be there tomorrow morning. And so we did a 20-mile ride along the coast. And the following day, my son's a soccer player, and he had a game out in Oceanside. And one of the dads is a cyclist, and he's like, why don't we ride to the game? I said, okay. So that was 30 miles. And then on Monday, I called Christy back, and I said, what's that ride you're doing in a couple months here? And she explained it to me, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. She's like, but there's a 3-day option. I said, well, maybe I could do that. So the next day I signed up. I roped my husband into signing up, and before you know it, the rest is history. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever done. I couldn't wait every Saturday morning or Sunday morning to show up to the group rides. And then showing up in Santa Barbara that morning and taking off was exhilarating. It was like the power of community, the power of family, just people next to you that I hadn't met before. And I got to learn their stories over that 84-mile day or over a beer when we were done. It was, I'm so thankful that I did that ride. And next year, you guys are stuck with me. Sorry, because my husband and I decided we're going to do the 7-day next year.
Well, and the other thing is that Boston Marathon you did, you could do that in your recumbent.
I'm looking at all kinds of different options.
I love that. Yeah. Once an athlete, always an athlete. There's nothing wrong with recreating, right? You start out as a runner and you get into cycling. And we have actually a group in San Diego called the Dead Runners Society. It's all these guys who ride Moab on their mountain bikes and ride roads. And these were all elite runners who can't run anymore. So, your case is a little different, but it's still the same thing. They can't run, you can't run, but you can do other stuff.
Exactly.
So how's the book doing?
So it's crazy. It's doing really, really well. I'm waiting actually to get some of the reports. But I got an email over the weekend that under one category on Amazon, it's #1.
Wow.
I know, this 145-page book. I don't know. Maybe it just hit a spot. I don't know. Or maybe it's just all of my friends that are supporting. I don't know.
That's what you raised. You raised $10,000 for CAF.
Yes.
And how are you, Molly, who's your alter ego? How much is there a connection there?
I would say Molly and I could be twins.
Okay. That is very fun.
But I have 2 teenagers, a freshman and a senior. Yep. And so I didn't want to do a memoir. Sure. And so I decided to do, a novel based strongly on my life.
I love it. So how important has CAF been in this journey?
It's been life-changing. It's been incredible. And the people that are part of the community are some of the best people I've ever met.
Pretty special.
Yeah, really special.
Michelle, we love having you part of the CAF family. And I'm so glad that you found your second athletic career. One is a runner and 2 is you never know, right? Now you're in the recumbent, and that thing could take you wherever the hell you want to go. That's right. I've already started making notes about Molly's $1 Million Challenge. Thank you so much for joining me on CAF's Heroes of Sport. It's an honor to get to chat with you. You too. Thanks, Bob. Again, everybody, CAF's Heroes of Sport. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.